10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Game over.
Welcome to Game Over Montreal. The Montreal Canadiens are winning the season series against the Toronto Maple Leafs. These Montreal Canadiens, Marty St. Louis, now 2-0 against the Leafs in his coaching career. And as Steve Dangle reminded everyone on his stream on Sportsnet, he was the one who eliminated the Toronto Maple Leafs from playoff contention way back in 2006. Does anybody else in the entire world know that? Well, now they do, thanks to Steve Dangle. I'm going to welcome in my guest from the Steve Dangle Podcast and SDPN, Jesse Blake. How's it going, Jesse?
Andrew, it's 43, 38, and 49. The last three games for Jake Allen, those are the saves he's made. Who is this guy?
You know what? My takeaway from this is the Leafs could have traded for this guy.
That's true. He was injured at the time, come, I guess, trade deadline day.
Yeah,
Monday.
he was just, I think he'd been pulled off IR like that day or the day before.
Yeah. But what would a package be for Jake Allen? Like, what would the Canadiens want? Just a couple draft picks? Because we're not giving up like a prospect for Jake Allen.
I have no idea because Kent Hughes played so tight to the chest with every trade that he made this year. He asked the moon for everyone, right? And he said heading into the deadline that they weren't planning on trading a goalie. When he traded Andrew Hammond to New Jersey just to keep him in an NHL spot with Allen coming back. But I think it would have cost maybe a first round pick, especially to Toronto. Okay. But
see, because that's always my thing. It's like, okay, you want the guy, but what's it going to cost you? And the first round pick, I've been like, hey, Dubas probably should have sent it to the moon for like Fleury. But for Jake Allen, you'd be like, that's not really worth it. But then if he plays like this, you're like, you should have got that first round pick for Jake Allen.
Yeah,
it's unbelievable.
Hindsight is the best, right? Like,
yeah.
You can look back and see what Jake Allen's doing right now and say like, oh yeah, it was the easiest decision ever. Why'd they screw this up? But yeah, it's tough to really rationalize. Even going for Fleury, he hasn't had a great year, right? It's not a guarantee that he comes in and is better than even Shalgren, who, man, I feel bad for him right now. He's the guy that I feel the most bad for because I thought that, especially in the first period where he had nothing to do, like every single shot that he faced was really high quality and he was on it. But
yeah, because they didn't get their first shot until I think 11 minutes left in that first period. And
Yep.
I'm not an NHL goaltender, obviously, but the goalies always talk about how it's hard to get in a rhythm when you're not facing any shots. Like you want some low quality shots early on in the game so you can get in a rhythm, get in a groove. And then when Shalgren's just out there sitting there for half a period, and then all of a sudden there's two amazing scoring chances by the Canadiens. I'm not surprised that he let in the first one. The one that Nylander screwed up on.
Yeah, poor Nylander. Your guy, Willie Nylander. People were ragging on him for the empty net goal too. And I was like, come on. The empty netter.
No, I have no sympathy for Nylander right now. Like there was a view on that first goal for the Canadiens of up the ice. And you see Kerfoot take his stick out and point to Nylander that you've got to get the man who's trailing because you're alone on that side of the ice. That's your guy. And he doesn't do it. He doesn't back check. And it's disgusting. And he deserved to get put down in the lineup by Keefe there for the rest of the game.
Ironic that he was the one who scored to tie it, right?
Yeah.
I guess it's on the power play. It's a totally different situation, but it's weird that, Nylander is such an interesting player because you look back to last year's playoffs and I feel like he was Toronto's best player. Just incredible the entire series. And to start this year, again, while like Matthews started the season recovering from wrist surgery, Marner started off kind of like in his own head from last year's playoffs. It was Nylander who kind of carried them through the beginning of the season. And then as Marner and Matthews ascended and they've been like two of the best forwards in the league since like November on, Nylander's just kind of stagnated for whatever reason. Do you guys know what's wrong with him?
I don't know. A lot of people are blaming that entire line, the Kerfoot, Tavares, Nylander line. Like they haven't been really cooking. They've been putting up the points, but as a unit, they don't seem to have it together. So I'm happy that Keefe is finally trying to change something. But like you said, Matthews and Marner have been, since they threw up the stats since January 15th, they've been the best two teammates in the entire NHL. And then when you have that on the line ahead of you, like it really puts a spotlight on how much Nylander's struggling. And from an outside perspective, when you're watching the game, because you're not hyper focused on these things as like us Leaf fans are, do you see Nylander and a little bit of Tavares where he was a little out of position on that same goal where he took I forget who he took the body of, but he made a hit when the puck was going to his right side. Do you notice these things, that the defensive lapses that line is making, as somebody who's not hyper focused on the Leafs?
I mean, I'm not as hyper focused on. I feel like, yeah, I'm not seeing it as much. I feel like with Tavares, I see just less engagement overall. Mm-hmm. I think he's been injured for a bit here this season. Like, I know he's recovered a bit now, but there was a stretch when he had that, like, was it a 10-game goalless drought or something like that, or 11-game
that's
goalless
when people
drought?
were really getting on him.
Yeah, and you look at his, not even underlying numbers, but his shot rate, and his shot rate plummeted during that. There was a point where he wasn't even getting a shot a game, and that's John Tavares. And I was like, that's not just confidence or a bad luck streak. Something's wrong there. And maybe it's that him and Nylander don't really mesh that well together, or that when one of them is struggling, their specific skill sets don't like facilitate them digging themselves out of a rut, if you know what I mean.
Right.
Maybe they just need a Michael Bunting who, you know, forms out the rest of that line, and they don't really have it right now.
Yeah. And I don't think Kerfoot's that guy. Like I for the playoff, like the last, I think it's like 20 games the Leafs got less than 20 games. I think it's like 18 or whatever they got left in the season. This is where you figure out your playoff lineups. Like this is where Keefe's need to explore the line combinations and see what's going to work, and then definitively decide, okay, game one, this is what we're going with. And I don't think Kerfoot works on that line. I think it'll be Kasha. I think it'll be maybe Mikheyev. Mikheyev looked great tonight. Mikheyev's looked great the last couple of weeks. But like you said, I don't think Kerfoot's that guy that's really going to get Tavares and Nylander going. And they need a Bunting type, like you said, like on that line that Matthews and Marner have. And I think that might be Kasha. I think that might be Mikheyev. So I want to see him try at least Mikheyev for now, because Kasha's out with the injury. So I want to see him just try different things and formulate those Stanley Cup winning habits. You know, it's just right now is the trial for the playoffs.
And as a trial for the playoffs, I mean, I gotta dig in on Steve a little bit more here, because
okay,
you know, I listened to the podcast, and it was a few episodes ago, so it might have been last week or the week before, but it was just like a passing note that Steve was talking about how, like, if the Leafs had John Tavares, there's 100% chance that they win that series against the Montreal Canadiens. And yet, without Jeff Petrie, without Arturi Lehkonen, without Brendan Gallagher, without, hey, Phil Deneau's gone too, without Shea Weber, without Carey Price, Tavares is in the lineup. Mm-hmm. They're losing the season series. Like, there's something in there with Toronto, and like, they can't close it out. Like, it's bad. I don't know what to do at this point, because I feel like maybe this season is the best case scenario, because they're going into the playoffs and they're most likely going to face Tampa or Florida.
Mm-hmm. And those are they face Boston right now.
Oh, are they against Boston right now? Because they're in the wild card spot, right?
2-3. Boston leapfrogged Tampa last time I checked on Friday. So I don't know where the games sit today, but right now it was Toronto, Boston in the 2-3. So they would play. So there's a chance it's either Toronto versus Florida, Tampa, or Boston.
I think Toronto just got knocked down to the first wild card spot, which would actually have them against Carolina.
Oh, so even Carolina, there's another option.
That would actually be a blessing in disguise, I think, if they could get out of the Atlantic Division. Not that Carolina's an easy situation, but at least you're against Freddie Anderson, who has a history in the playoffs. You're very aware. Maybe this year, where the Leafs aren't favored to win, they can kind of get out of their heads a little bit and just play relaxed, and it could almost look like that first year they made the playoffs against Washington, that for maybe slay a dragon. I know everyone has been talking about slaying a dragon for years now, about beating Boston finally, but I think the Toronto Maple Leafs are their own dragon, as I saw someone put on Twitter the other day.
Yeah, I think you're onto something with like the underdog mentality for this team because they've never had that. And games like this one tonight versus Montreal, you pencil that in, hopefully on your schedule as a hopeful win. There's one of the bottom teams in the league. You're rolling right now with your full lineup, and you think, oh, we're going to go in there, we're going to beat Montreal, and then you lose the game. So maybe that's what they need. They need a change of mentality when they actually head to the playoffs because they're going to make the playoffs, obviously. And they need to come in as like not the favorite. Maybe that's a way to exercise the demons. I don't know, because they mentally they don't have it. Mentally, like you need to get this win. I know you put up 51 shots against Jake Allen, and when you look at all the score effects, I saw on Puckpedia they had a 96% chance to win the game. But you still got to win the game, even though everything's in your favor to win it. You still didn't win it, and they need to figure out how to just overcome that hump, and maybe having just an underdog mentality going up against like Carolina or Florida in the first round is the way to exercise all of the demons.
Yeah, it makes sense in my head. Maybe it doesn't work out that way.
Well, who knows, so they'll blow it in dramatic fashion, and it'll be incredible.
Yeah, although I will say, watching the Panthers earlier this week, man, that team is scary. Like, the way that they're just able to score out of nowhere and the chances that they generate are absolutely incredible.
I really didn't think they were going to add Giroux, and then they did. And I was like, okay, just get even better.
Just cheating. I do think I know he got a penalty that I think that was the one that Caulfield scored on, but I like Colin Blackwell tonight, and I think Giordano is a solid fit as well. It really smooths out the loss of Muzzin, right? So like now if Muzzin comes back and regains his form a little bit, it's more of a bonus more than they really need that or they're boned.
Right. It's a great problem that the Leafs now have on defense because they have too many defensemen if everyone comes back healthy. And like Justin Hall, he's been so up and down. He who did he dance around in the first period? Was it he danced around Romanov? I'm like, who is that Justin Hall? I've never seen him made a play like that. And then so seeing what the defense can do here. And then Giordano seems to be in the right place at the right time at all times. Like his 38-year-old brain knows where the puck is going before it goes there. And he's always in the right spot. So yeah, for the rest of the season, especially if Muzzin is back healthy for the playoffs, the Leafs have a great problem on defense. It's just a matter of, hey, when you put up 51 shots, can you please just score more than the other team? That's all I'm asking.
There was a comment here that's saying irrelevant now, but this is the worst shot differential at home in Montreal franchise history. Outshot by 33 shots on goal, franchise worst.
And they won.
Just win, baby, right?
Right. That's all I'm asking. It's so Leafy in that they lost this game and Jake Allen stood on his head. He had some like really, really high caliber saves there that essentially changed the fortunes of the entire game.
Yeah, especially in that first period, right? Where like that it could have been 5-0 after that first period. Easily. And Jake Allen just held on. There's a comment here from a Canadiens fan saying, can't wait to draft a middle line winger with our 9th overall pick while watching other teams in the playoffs. Here's the thing though. They're winning and they're still in 31st. Like,
are they really?
Yeah, and Arizona has a game in hand on them and 2 points and more wins and more regulation wins. Like, the Canadiens will most likely still finish 32nd or 31st. And to put something together where they're actually building towards the future while still finishing that low, pretty darn positive overall. So I think that Canadiens fans overall are pretty happy right now.
Yeah, especially like the last couple of weeks. How can you not be so excited about what Caulfield is doing? Like I saw on the broadcast, I wrote it down here, is a 52 goal pace since St. Louis has been behind the bench. Like that's incredible. That's top caliber. That's all-star. That's everything you could have ever asked for out of Cole Caulfield. And you're doing all this while also possibly getting Shane Wright. So like Montreal Canadiens fans, I'm sure they're on top of the moon right now. And like the losses don't matter, I assume. Like when you look at the loss, you're like, okay, we lost, but like every time we lose, there's some good momentum. I didn't like what I saw from the defense, especially in the in that first period, like you said, when the Leafs were just controlling the entire play. But like what can you do about that when you've lost all of the guys they lost, and now Petry's out for the rest of the year, and you just traded Sherrod? Like you can only ask so much from the guys they have, and what you're getting is what you're getting, and it's not bad.
Yeah, and I mean the defense is in such flux, right? Because they traded Sherrod, they traded Kulak, they didn't trade Petry. They tried to trade Petry,
and now he's out.
Didn't get the deal. Now he's out indefinitely, which who knows what that means the rest of the season. No idea. And also like losing Shea Weber over the offseason, like Joel Edmondson, I think, played his 7th game of the year this year. Like tonight.
Oh, wow.
Like because he missed the first 50-something games of the year with a back injury, and then dealing with his dad dying. So right now they have like one of their top 5 defensemen from last year, which is crazy that they're winning it all. It's just like when St. Louis first took over, Christian Dvorak was out, Jake Evans was moved up to third line center from 4th, and Laurent Dauphin, who played excellent tonight, was moved up from the AHL to the second line center, and like they're still winning games. Like there's a lot to build around with that if you're still getting results, and the guys who you expect to deliver are delivering. And I saw there was a comment today on Twitter, just in a reply to me, talking about like what the team is different, or how the team is different under St. Louis. That even in games they're losing, there's always pushback, right? Like the worst game that they played probably under St. Louis is that 8-4 loss to the Jets, where they allowed 4 goals in the first like couple of minutes, and it was like all bad breakdowns, like hugely bad defensive breakdowns. But then they scored 4 goals and tied it up. Like eventually the game got away from them because they were undisciplined in the third period. But the fact that they went from 4-0 to a tie is still something for a team that's this bad. There's always something. It's kind of the opposite of the Leafs, where even when you win, they do something that makes you doubt them.
Yeah.
The Habs right now are losing in a good way. Constantly when they're losing. It's really weird that these two fan bases, I feel like the Leafs have all the chances in the world to actually win a Stanley Cup this year. They have a really legitimately excellent team. The underlying numbers, fantastic. Great deadline for additions. And you look at who's happy between the two fan bases, and it's definitely Canadiens fans.
Yeah, I don't know how, as a Leafs fan, how you can be confident in this team when you're going to face a high caliber team in the first round. You're going to get screwed because of your division. And just you watch these games and you're like, they can't take care of business at teams they clearly have more talent than, and they outplay them in every single way, and they still can't take care of business. And you're talking about the defense. I wasn't really too impressed with Lagesson in his first game in the Canadiens uniform, but I assume he'll figure that out. Like, what do you expect from him coming over from Edmonton, and just what he gave tonight?
Yeah, I talked to a few folks in Edmonton because I haven't watched a lot of him, and they were like, expect him to get like overwhelmed, right? And that's exactly what we saw out of the gates in the first period. He was really struggling with the Leafs forecheck and making hope plays. I thought the first goal, he actually he got picked by, I think, Bunting near the net, and Bunting got a little chance from the side of the net, but then he picked up the puck, and I thought actually made a good play to try to skate it up, but then didn't play the puck quickly enough, and then Marner got in his way, and then Bunting was already back on him. And it was just like, you're not going to win against those two guys when you're Wild Bill Lagesson, as they called him in Edmonton.
That first goal by Matthews, like a couple minutes in, that was all Marner. Like, I give all the credit to Marner for making that play on Lagesson and getting that puck over to him. But yeah, that wasn't like, if that's what to expect from him, I don't know if he's in the lineup regularly coming like next year. Like, are they bringing him back? Like, I don't know.
No. I think he has to play 18 games to be a restricted free agent.
Okay.
And I don't think he'll play 18 games down the stretch for the Canadiens. I think when they acquired him, they only had 19 games left. And I think I think he can only play 17. This game's 65.
Right. So this move was kind of just to have fresh bodies for the rest of the season.
A body in there in case of injuries, and then also like not having to commit to anyone. So the second round pick is the real return for Brett Kulak, which is a solid return for him. Let's focus on the defense, because you mentioned the defense. I kind of ragged on Romanov during the game because twice tonight he went for a big hit along the boards on Hull and on Mikheyev. and just totally whiffed, and it was like a partial break going right past him, right?
Yeah.
But someone pointed out to me that he's playing on the right side, and I was like, oh yeah, he is playing on the right side. He's not a right side defenseman, because losing Jeff Petrie, they have, I think, only one right-handed defenseman left in the lineup in Chris Weidman. Chris Weidman left-handed. I think he's right-handed. So it's
Right.
like they're kind of really forced to rejig things around, and Romanov is forced to play on his offside. I know he's playing a lot of minutes as well. St. Louis has really relied on him pretty heavily. But at the same time, I'm like, if you're playing on your offside and you're not super comfortable, maybe don't make that play twice in one game against a high octane offensive team.
So I thought you were going to give him the benefit of the doubt for making those plays. I thought you were going to say, okay, he's playing on his offside. We'll forgive him for those mistakes. But you're criticizing him for taking chances.
My criticism is like half of what it was before I realized he was playing on the right side. But I feel like you got to think in your head, should I play it a little bit more cautious here instead of throwing caution to the wind? At the same time, like in the situation the Canadiens are in, I kind of do like that you're throwing caution to the wind and that they're not getting benched for it, because who knows, if he catches a guy, it can light up the crowd, and it's fun to watch. You need some entertainment value, but just for his development, I think one thing Romanov needs to learn is time and place.
Yeah. And I think for the fan base to continue to be happy, like what you want to see out of the guys is smart plays. You want to see them going out and trying and making the right decisions in each play. And it's definitely a learning curve for Romanov. Like he's still young. He's still got to learn these little things. But if I'm St. Louis, I show him that film in the film room and I say, this is what not to do. You know, like, because these last couple of games, you need to get those habits where you're an NHL caliber defenseman. We can throw you out every night, and this is not how you want to be playing, especially if we're putting you on the other side and we're expecting you to just kind of hold fort, you know, stay steady in a defensive role. Like that's not. I wouldn't be happy with a play like that. It's not dire where you need to bench him because you're not heading to the playoffs, but like that's a talking to.
Yeah, that's definitely, you got to pull him aside and like talk in his ear at the very least. Be like, please don't do that again.
Especially because it was twice. Like the one on Hall, if I remember correctly, was pretty egregious. Like the miss.
So was the Mikheyev one. Actually, I think the Mikheyev one was worse. He went for like a hip check and completely missed.
Yeah, like that's a talking to for a young guy. Don't be doing that.
100%. And someone points out he had a career high 27-16 time on ice tonight. Yeah, I mean that's what happens when your third pair is like, you just can't trust them. I will say I was pretty impressed with David Savard tonight, a guy who has been, you know, the focus of much ire in Montreal this year for good and ungood reasons. But he's now scored 2 goals in 3 games since he came back from injury. Offensive defenseman David Savard, just like when he was in junior. The craziest thing about tonight might have been that him and Ilya Lyubushkin had fantastic scoring chances in this game, like 2 or 3 each.
No, you know what I want on a 4-on-2 for the Leafs is Ilya Lyubushkin taking the wrist shot. Like I don't care how many guys are sitting in the middle of the slot. Like pass that puck, Ilya. Like you can't be the one taking that shot. It was crazy decision making on that play.
Who was the trailer too? Because he was completely
uncovered. 3 guys. It was everybody on the penalty kill. Because it was, I believe it was on the penalty kill. So it would have been a Mikheyev out there. And then his defense partner would have been, I guess, Hall. It would have been Hall Lyubushkin on the penalty kill. Whatever you're doing, you get that puck over to Mikheyev. Like, I don't care. Like, pass that puck. And with the defense, I saw today Montreal sign Jordan Harris from Northeastern. I believe. Is he somebody who's going to join the team before the end of the year?
Yeah, from what I understand, they're going to burn the first year of that 2-year contract. That's like part of the thing that you do with college free agents, I guess. And they're going to play him out the rest of the season. I don't know how many games he'll play, but my assumption is over 10, like over the 9 that it takes to burn the contract year, just because I guess that's what they wanted to owe him or whatever. But it's that whole situation is interesting because there's been kind of like a back and forth on Habs Twitter the last couple days about how like, oh, Kent Hughes is getting too much credit for signing Jordan Harris, it was going to happen anyway. But there was an article written at the beginning of the year where Marc Bergevin did an interview with Marc-Antoine Gaudin of the Athletic, and he basically said, "Oh yeah, Jordan Harris wants to go to Boston or New York. He's a free agent after the season. Nothing we can do, and we haven't really spoken to him in over a year." And yeah, I know. This is a guy who's
crazy.
Up for contract saying stuff like that. And then Kent Hughes, pretty much as soon as he was hired, goes down and watches the Bean Pot and talks with Harris. And he comes back and he's like, yeah, he's going to sign you.
Oh, because I saw the report that he was when he got drafted in 2018, he's like, I'm going to go do my 4 years. Like, I want to go to school. I want to graduate. I'm going to do that. But for Bergevin to just like point blank be like, oh, he's not signing here. Like, that's just a window into, I assume, the type of management that the Canadiens have had over the last 8 years, if that's the way he's treating these players. Because Jordan Harris, I saw Scott Wheeler had him number 4 in the prospects rankings of the entire organization. He's a great player, and he looks like he can help right away on defense where the Canadiens need it. And for Bergevin to be so flippant about that, like, thank God you guys got Kent Hughes in there, like, to do this great work for the team.
Yeah, it's kind of weird the way that the Canadiens have operated, because both in a development point of view and in terms of a signing people point of view, the way that Bergevin and his management group operated have been like, if you're a good enough player, you'll figure it out and make the NHL. Like, it's your job to force us to give you a roster spot. And with that attitude, you'll still get guys like Nick Suzuki and Brendan Gallagher, who were always going to make it. But some guys will fall through the cracks. And the same with like signing. It's like, oh, if you want to sign here, then you'll sign here, but we're not going to try to convince you. It's like, but it's kind of your job to convince people. Like, that's a large part of your job, is to convince people, right? So it's like, I understand from the point of view of a manager is you definitely want people who want to be there, right? That want to bleed for the crest on the front of the jersey. Your Brandon Gallagher's, your Arturi Lekkonen's, who they just traded. But you also have to find people who might not have been convinced, but then you sell them on it. Like, that's how you win, right? Like, and not just in unrestricted free agency, but guys that you draft who might not be sold on where they're going to play. And I also feel like for Harris, seeing how this season has gone and how many defensemen have moved out, like, the path has cleared for him drastically to go straight to the NHL, which must be attractive.
Yeah, and right there is like an obvious selling point. If you're the GM of the team, if you're the president, you're like, hey, Harris, here's your clear what you can play in the NHL today. Like, if you're on the team, if you're on the roster, we have room for you because Legesson's not going to be here for long. So, like, you can come in. And the fact that you don't think Bergevin was a salesman at all, like, that's such an error on how you should be running an organization. Like, you got to bring in guys. And like, I'm never going to forget their Stanley Cup run because they went through the Leafs. But like, when a GM comes off a Stanley Cup final berth and then 3 months later, he's no longer the GM of the team, like, there's something there. And I don't want to rehash the whole Bergevin thing, but it's such a window into who he is. If like, he's not that salesman, if he's just like, all right, we're the Canadiens, people should want to play here. That's a ridiculous way to think. That's a ridiculous way to manage a team.
It is 100%. I just want to shout out to the mods here quickly, because the comments are very aggressive, which I understand because it's a rivalry. But guys, let's not just throw pure bait out there. Like, people were like,
oh god,
I saw a comment that was like, the Leafs have no talent. Like, let's calm it down a little bit, guys. Let's calm it down. No talent. Let's calm it down a little bit. So we got multiple mods in here trying to keep it under control. So please, people, I know it's exciting that the Habs and the Leafs played and the Habs won, but everyone got to calm it down a little bit. Be friendly. Everyone's friends here. We're Canadian. Remember that.
Right.
Sarah Y, loyal viewer, says, I hope teammates are buying Alan a steak dinner this weekend. I mean, yes. He deserves many steak dinners. And I saw a comment here earlier, somebody relaying John Liu from TSN saying that Carey Price is going on the Canadiens' upcoming road trip, which means if he's over his cold that he was sidelined with, he might actually play soon.
Wow.
That is a positive story.
Is that's something he's wanted to do this entire season? Like, his narrative has been like, I want to get into games if I can get into games. Like, I'm shocked that's his mentality. Because so many times we see, like, if somebody's out with a long-term injury, take it, like, be back next year, unless the team's in the playoffs. Then you wait till game one of the playoffs and then you LTIR it. But like Carey Price, I didn't expect him to come back. And like, but even though he said he's wanted to come back, I thought that would always be like the media narrative. And then we reached the end of the season and then he never played a game. So like, it's cool that he's back in his word and he's actually going to play games. That's unbelievable. What a story.
Yeah, I think this kind of solidifies where the whole situation with Price is going, because there have been a lot of people who are speculating, oh, does he actually want to play again? Because, he's had this time now to be with his family, and you can tell just from the way he talks about it, like, he's really enjoyed having all this time to spend with his young kids and his wife. After going to the Stanley Cup final and losing, and how much the team has been bad and how it looks like it's going into a rebuild, like, it would be understandable with the injuries that he's had if he was like, you know what, I'm just going to retire. But he also has that like competitive spirit that we've seen through the playoffs at the Olympics. Like, when times are important, he is incredible almost always. So the fact that he actually still wants to play in an essentially lost season, Price is still Price, right? So if the Canadiens are actually dedicated to turning this thing around as quickly as Hughes and Gorton have kind of hinted, maybe he might be around long enough to see the results.
100%. But like, the question for me is, how are you going to bench Jake Allen for Carey Price? Like, Jake Allen won the night tonight. He probably won the net forever for the Canadiens. And like, that's my starting goalie for the Montreal Canadiens going forward.
People said that going into the playoffs last year too. I would assume that Price is going to play like the odd game just because he hasn't played for so long, right? He'll play like a back-to-back to start, and they'll probably keep going with Allen as the starter, but they won't rely on him to do every game. I feel like unless you're like, who in the league today, maybe Connor Hellebuck is a guy who can play every game. You know what I mean? Like
Vasilevsky, probably.
Yeah,
Hellebuck,
Vasilevsky. Yeah. There's like very few guys that do that anymore, right?
Yeah. And now it's all tandems. Yeah.
Yep, it's all down to tandems. I mean, we talked about Campbell coming into this year and his career high being like, what was it, 30-something games played in a season. Yeah, it was last year during a shortened, compressed season. But you kind of saw him run at a gas this year.
Yeah, there's a reason the Dubas went out and got Mrazek and signed him to a 2-year deal. So it'll be Campbell and Mrazek, and they're fighting for the net. And we know how it's gone with Mrazek, and now we got Shalgren. So hopefully it's Campbell and Shalgren battling for the net. But yeah, the tandem thing is the future of the NHL. Goalies don't play 70 games anymore. It hasn't been that way for a while. And like Hellebuck for sure is the outlier. Vasilevsky is the outlier. But next year, if it's Price and then this Jake Allen and the whole new core that Montreal is trying to put together, if they buy in the offseason, if they get a big name free agent, who knows what they do. Sneaky good team, Montreal Canadiens next year. I don't know. I'm putting them on my list.
They might be. I mean, I think they would need another center, right? And that's like the hardest thing to find unless they draft Shane Wright and he's NHL ready, but I feel like they don't want to bring him into the NHL right away. I just looking at what Hughes has done through the trades, I feel like there's a bit of a vision that you can see outlined that almost all of the trades are a high pick and then a prospect who's like 20, 21 years old. So to me, that says he's looking at boosting the amount of guys who can break into the NHL like 2 to 3 years from now. And then the picks come 2 to 3 years after that, where you have like more high-end picks in the next couple of drafts here. So it's like the start of it will be 2 to 3 years from now. And I mean, hopefully, just as somebody who has to watch all the Montreal Canadiens games, I would love for them to be bad next year too. Just like bad, but entertaining. But draft Connor Bedard so this team has a legitimate superstar to watch night in and night out. Not that Caulfield is not entertaining to watch or Nick Suzuki, but Connor Bedard is just like the next level above. He's the Austin Matthews that they need. And that would take them to real contender status, I think.
You mentioned the Canadiens needing a center, and like Dvorak obviously wasn't it when they acquired him, but there's somebody who's a UFA this year that might have a pajama photo in a Canadiens bed sheets, and he might sign in Montreal this offseason. His name is Mr. Bob Ross Nazem Kadri. That's what Steve Dangle has been peddling. That's what I 100% agree. I think is going to happen. Nazem Kadri of the Canadiens is a real possibility. They have the cap space. They have the need for a center. And what a way to speed up the rebuild if you get Kadri.
Yeah, I saw Steve talk that up. I saw it initially on TikTok, actually, when you guys clipped it. And I was like,
what a way to get your hockey news.
I know. I was like, there's no way that's going to happen. And now I'm looking at it and I'm like, I could almost see it.
It makes too much sense.
It does. Like, I've been peddling the Patrice Bergeron idea because Kent Hughes was his agent. Yeah. And, he's a hometown boy. And people say he was a Nordiques fan, but the Nordiques moved when he was like 6 or 8 or something like that.
There's no way.
Yeah. Almost every single Nordiques fan is now a Canadiens fan. It's just the way it is. There's very few hardliners who didn't move over. And, I know he said he was a Bruins fan after the Bruins drafted him. Everybody kind of does that. So, yeah, I think it doesn't make sense for Bergeron because he's at the end of his career and he probably wants to chase another cup. But it could be a familiar situation. He could mentor Nick Suzuki. Although Kadri, if he's not looking, I know Kadri is probably looking for a lot of money. I think that's the main thing that might deter.
Canadiens have it though. Like if they haven't made that big splash in a number of years, like if they want to spend the money, they can on a center here to really speed up the rebuild. And like the Bergeron thing, I don't think it was the most ridiculous idea. I think it's just ridiculous for this offseason. I think in 2 years, like when he's really up there in age, then it's Bergeron to the Canadiens as Spezza came to the Leafs.
Ooh,
like I could see him in a fourth line role when he's past his prime, when he's really past his prime. And Patrice is there with Kadri, with Nick Suzuki, with Caulfield, with Romanov. Like that's the future of the team right there.
Yeah, I think the main thing they would have to avoid is giving like the Tavares contract to Kadri because I feel like at his age, it's such an outlier season this year, and his last contract was such a steal that he's probably looking to get big time paid, and I don't blame him one bit. But you still got to negotiate the price contract under the cap, and Jake Allen's really cheap, but it's still around $12.5 million for 2 goalies. It's hard, like you got to fit things in. The nice thing is their defense is going to have like 0 cap hits.
Yeah, especially if like couple like I don't they won't have a draft pick play, but like if Harris makes the lineup next year, that's like entry level. They'll really save some money on the defense. But like if you want a guy who knows a big market, Nazem Kadri played in Toronto all those years. He went to Colorado and now he comes back to Montreal. He's going to be up for the challenge. He's going to want to play there. I think it's an outside shot. If they want to give him all the money, he'll definitely sign there. That's what I'm predicting.
I know his dad would love it because I know his dad's a huge Habs fan.
Yeah, that's where it comes from.
Chat, Kadri can't get a postseason suspension here because we won't be making the playoffs for a season or 2. That's true.
That's fair. Mike Hoffman. I was just looking at the lineup tonight. I want to mention Mike Hoffman. He looked great tonight.
Yeah, I mean, since St. Louis took over, his effort level is so much better. Like especially defensively, he's still not great, but he's trying. And I feel like if Mike Hoffman could just shoot and try to take away pucks, like clip off passes in the neutral zone, he'd be a great player. If he didn't have to do anything else, like he was on a line where everything else is taken care of for him, he'd be fantastic. But unfortunately, he also has to pass the puck and forecheck and back check
and skate and do everything else on the ice. Yeah.
And that kind of limits him.
There was a lot of just like tertiary forwards who had really great nights, like Byron and Evans and Hoffman. It was a lot of positive stuff out of the Canadiens tonight, and I don't know if it's supposed to make me upset as a Leafs fan, but like I'm happy for the team and the fans that you get a lot of positive stuff in a losing season.
Yeah, I think that's the thing about the Canadiens right now is they're that kid who like tried really hard and you muss their hair and you're like, good job, kid.
Yeah, and then they beat you.
And then they beat you.
And then Jake Allen stands on his head. I don't know.
Oh yeah, he was like absolutely ridiculous. That was a performance for that was incredible. And I mentioned him earlier on, but our very own Larry Dolphins, as they call him, Laurent Dauphin. They call him Larry Dolphins here.
Larry Dolphins, that's good.
And the Habs even got in on it, and they have like a dolphin gif when he does anything. But yeah,
Do
he
they
was
really?
great tonight.
That's a good nickname. I like that.
It's really good. I was kind of surprised to see he only played 8 minutes, 8.5 minutes at even strength, because he seemed like he didn't leave the ice in the second period.
There was weird moments for the Habs when the Leafs were dominating play where they would have guys just out there for like 2.5 minutes. They kept showing the shift clock there in the corner on the broadcast, and guys were just hanging out there. And there's that moment early on in the first period where they had the 3 icings, and like icing is, I don't want to call it a laziness play, but like when you're icing the puck as a professional, you're not on top of your game in that moment. You never want to be sending the puck down the ice like that. And 3 in a row was very apparent for the Canadiens. And then the long shifts, like they didn't play a complete game. And like we keep going back to, they somehow pulled it out when they really got going in the middle of the second there. So yeah, I hope they get all those little things together, because the team is going to be really good and they have a bright future.
Absolutely. Someone says here that Leafs fans on Twitter want Nylander scratched next game. Wow.
If you want to do more Leafs talk, I'm down for it, because yeah, it was a brutal game by him. Like it's unacceptable. I don't care that you score 1 back on the power play. Like it's the best power play percentage in franchise history for the Toronto Maple Leafs this year in 2022. It's the greatest one in their 105-year history. So, like, of course, they're going to score on the power play. I want you to get back on defense, William Nylander. That's what we need from you. Like, God.
So he's not getting the crown tonight, Jesse.
No, he is not getting the crown.
The unsponsored crown, by the way. But hey, if you want to throw some money at SDPN, they can bring back the crown.
Yeah. Well, Game Over will sponsor the crown.
There we go. Game Over sponsors the crown for the Leafs. Game Over Montreal sponsoring the Leafs crown. Steve Dangle looks so beside himself after the Leafs lost. I mean, Steve hates every loss, right? But yeah. I think these ones where it's so winnable hurt him the most.
What do you think the best first round matchup is for the Leafs? Is it Carolina? Is it Florida? Is it Tampa? Is it Boston?
I think it's Carolina because of the Freddie thing, but also because it gets them out of the Atlantic Division, because it's one thing to beat one of Tampa Bay, Boston, or Florida, but to beat 2 of them, that just sucks. Like, who's going to beat 2 of those teams and then win the third round too?
Right.
I just feel like it's such a murderer's row, and no disrespect to Carolina, who I think is great. But after you beat Carolina, I think Pittsburgh is really good, but has weaknesses that can be exploited. They have not had a lot of success in the postseason the last few years. The Rangers are just a goalie, which is scary.
They're a goalie and then 12 guys.
Yeah. Well, they've got some great scoring on there. Like they're that annoying combination of ridiculously high-end scoring and a really great goaltender, but they're shit. Like everything else is shit. So you know that you're going to outplay them and still lose.
Their rebuild, it's crazy.
Yeah, it almost makes no sense, because a lot of what's driving their success isn't what they did to rebuild. Shesterkin, yes, although he was like a late round pick years ago. But Artemi Panarin just being like, I want to sign there. Adam Fox being like, I don't want to sign there.
Chris Kreider, obviously.
Yeah, Kreider, longtime Ranger, having a crazy outlier season, like as big as Kadri's is. That's huge. But, I think Lafreniere's come on a little bit more lately, but I haven't even heard Capo Caco's name this year.
No, like non-factor.
Yeah, I know he's gotten a little bit better defensively, but yeah, he has 5 goals in 37 games. He hasn't played since January 21st, so that's why I haven't heard his name. That's wild.
Injuries there.
Yeah,
but I think that if I don't know if the losing is good, as a Leafs fan, I should be rooting for the losing and slipping into that wild card and getting Carolina in that first round matchup, because Carolina really is a great matchup for the Leafs, especially how they played them 2 weeks ago when they had that game and they snuck out that victory. Like Freddie's someone who can get rattled in the playoffs. Like we've seen it. The Leafs play good teams like Carolina really well. It's a great matchup, and like I don't want to get too happy about their playoff odds if they slip down at the wild card, but like I'm not going to be too upset. I'm not going to be too upset about these losses because it means a better first round matchup for the Leafs.
Does. I will say we talked about it a little bit before with Jake Allen in hindsight, but let's pretend, Jesse, that you don't have the last few games of Jake Allen. You've only got to go on like the last couple seasons where he was like decent in a 1B role. You know, I would say maybe a little bit better than decent because the Canadiens have been pretty terrible defensively over that time. But that's all you got to go on.
Okay.
He's injured, but he's coming back right after the deadline. If the Canadiens offer Jake Allen for a first round pick and they take back Peter Mrazek with no salary retained, do you do that?
Now, I would have done if the Fleury deal was the same thing. If you just replaced that question with Marc-Andre Fleury, I would have done that. But Jake Allen, for me, doesn't have enough of a pedigree to warrant a first round pick. If it's something lesser, like if the Montreal Canadiens wanted the Leafs 2023 second round pick, I believe they have that. I do that deal. I do Allen Campbell for the playoffs. Like that's a good little run for these last 18 games. But the first round pick, the price is a little too high.
Does that change if you realize that Allen is also signed for next year for just $2.875 million, which is less than Mrazek?
Because Mrazek is 2.9, is it?
I thought he was over 3.
Mrazek is 3.8.
Oh, so you're saving $1 million on the cap.
And Mrazek's for 2 more years after this year. He's a 3-year deal. Yeah. Yeah. You know what? First round pick to get out of the Mrazek deal, to have Jake Allen for the rest of the year. You convinced me with that contract information
and the next year.
Yeah. Do that deal, Dubas. Like I love the Vegas mentality that they've had since they've come in to the league as a franchise, where it's every year we want to go for it to win the cup. And I think more GMs should take that attitude towards things. And looking at
Ken
the numbers,
Holland.
Specifically Ken Holland, who should get off his butt and do some deals for McDavid and Draisaitl. Like get a goalie one of these years. It'd be nice. But the Leafs, the situation was dire enough that the fan base would have been over the moon for Allen Campbell, and then whatever you got out of Shalgren this week and next week. That would have been a real jolt to this team. And I think, if that's on the table, you got to do that. Yeah, you got to do it for the first round pick. Who cares about the first round pick? You're trying to win one round. The bar is literally on the ground for this franchise. You need to win one round. And if Jake Allen helps you win one round, that's what you need to do.
100%. And you know what sold me on Jake Allen being like a really big possible ad for a lot of teams going into the deadline, and why I'm shocked Edmonton didn't do it, is I heard a story that Jake Allen, when he was the backup in St. Louis, after he'd lost the job halfway through the year to Jordan Binnington, the year they won the cup, instead of, sulking as the presumptive number one on that team, he spent the year, or the playoffs, specifically, he watched tape and studied the opposing goaltenders and played their style in practice so that their team could shoot on that kind of style of goaltender to prep. Which I'm guessing he did the same thing last year with Price putting on a show on the route to the Stanley Cup final. That kind of stuff, and being known as a good locker room guy. Like, I think Jake Allen, I'm honestly shocked beyond reason that the Oilers specifically did not break down the door to get Jake Allen.
I think they saw how well Koskinen and Smith have been recently, and I think they were like, okay, we got enough here. We can try and do this with what we have, so we don't need to go out and sell anything. But and Stuart Skinner as well. Stuart Skinner has been playing decent. Like, they have 3 goalies, but the way you outline it like that, and just the magic beans that forming an NHL locker room is, like, NHL GMs love the character stories. The one, like you just said, they love having the character guys in the room. And if Jake Allen is that guy, he's going to those lengths to help a team get to the cup. And like, he's been to 2 cups. He knows what it takes. Bringing him into a team like Edmonton, a team like Toronto, that can really be a stabilizing factor. And that's more than worth a first round pick. Like, and especially if the Mrazek deal went the other way. Like, do the deal.
It's shocking. I mean, at least Toronto added, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I am consistently just blown away by the way that the Oilers have handled this whole situation. Like, I can't imagine having McDavid and Draisaitl and going out there publicly and being like, well, you can't go in all in every year.
They got Brett Kulak.
Yeah, that's true. They got Brett Kulak, who's a good
huge
addition.
ad.
I think he really helps them, honestly. And so far, apparently, the results have been great. He's been like solidifying things for Tyson Barrie, who, as you know from experience, Jesse, needs a lot of solidifying.
Right. I'm just happy they're off of CC and Barrie. Like, how dare they try that experiment? But like, I think if we were to ask Ken Holland about their additions, he would be like, well, I got Hyman. Like, Hyman is the stabilizing factor on the first line. Like, I brought him in. I got Duncan Keith. He's a winner. He knows how to win Stanley Cups, and I brought him into the locker room. And I think he would think of those things as huge additions for McDavid and Draisaitl. But like, from a numbers perspective, from anybody who's a fan of the team, you're like, that's not what's gonna get them over the hump. And clearly, with their start of the season, when they're on fire, it was all great there. But then when they fell off and they were just a big ball of a mess from November through January, like, that was, I think, more true than the early season Oilers. And that's when we saw that they just don't have enough right now. And then they're like, okay, we're gonna fire the coach, and that'll be what's gonna get us over. And we're bringing in Evander Kane and Brett Kulak, and now we've got it. But you need more pieces. Go do the big thing. Go get the big addition. Like, all these different guys, Kane, Hyman, Keith, they think those are the big additions that'll do it, but it's clearly not working. And I don't think they can get past a team like Calgary. Calgary really has from top to bottom a solid lineup, and in goal they have who I think right now is the best goaltender in the league besides Shesterkin, like Markstrom's number 2. And I don't see the Edmonton having any chance getting by a team like that in the playoffs. And that's what it's all about, building a team that's going to win in the playoffs. And if they don't have a shot doing that, then what have you done here, really, Ken Holland?
Especially when you inherit two of the best offensive players in the world. And by the way, right now, the Oilers are getting leafed. They're out shooting Calgary 12-6 and down 3-1.
Yeah, there you go. Who's in that goaltending?
50% save percentage tonight after you talked up how good their goaltending has been lately.
Well, there you go.
Oh, poor Edmonton. But I mean, they've been managed into the ground. And that's Mikko Koskinen. It's not even Mike Smith. Mike Smith, the only guy in the league older than Bunting.
What? That's a good fact. I'm gonna start using that as an official hockey stat. Mike Smith is the only player older than Michael Bunting. That's good.
Rookie of the year. I will say we've been talking about it a lot on the show, and since he scored again tonight, because it was kind of funny. I thought it was Gary Galley at first because I'm used to the second broadcast on Hockey Night in Canada now, but it was Craig Simpson, and Caulfield missed high, I think twice.
High and wide, two in a row
twice, and Simpson was going off on me like, oh, he's got to learn to shoot for a rebound. And I was like, man, if Caulfield is shooting for rebounds, that's an issue. He should be trying to pick corners. And lo and behold, the next shift on the power play, he like somehow gets a breakaway on the power play, which how does that even happen? Shoots high again, but then the next shot he's like, okay, I got this. Scores a goal. And as you mentioned earlier on, 52 goal per 82 game pace under St. Louis. Did Dom Ducharme rob him of a Calder Trophy?
Oh my God. Yeah. With that rough start to the year. Because what was he, goalless in like 10 games or pointless?
He had one goal in 30 games.
1 goal in 30 games. Yeah, that's if Caulfield had just been playing like how he's playing now, he's easily running away with the call. It'd be a tight race, to be honest, between him and Mo Seider, because Mo Seider's got so much love right now as a defenseman doing what he's doing at the level he is as a rookie.
But no love from Adam.
No love from Adam, obviously. Adam's leading the bandwagon of bunting for Calder, but it would be a 2-horse race between Seider and Caulfield if Caulfield just had a semi-decent start to the year for those first 30 games. Right now, like, there's no chance. Like, if you try and put Caulfield into this conversation, you're going too far. Like, you're being way too kind to him. But like, if he could have done anything at the beginning of the year, he easily could have had a Calder Trophy. And it's disappointing that he struggled that much in the start of the season, because what he's doing right now, seeing that shot, like, the dude already has it. Like, at his age, if he just learns to not shoot high and wide, like, then
learns to shoot for rebounds, right? Like a good NHL veteran.
No, just keep sniping those corners, Caulfield. Like, bring it a little down, and then you'll have 50 goals like in next 2 to 3 years. Like, if I could bet on that next 3 years, Caulfield scores 50 goals, I put money on that.
Oh man, 50 is such a huge number.
Nah, but he's such a good shot. He can do it. And he's a winger. Like, it's easier to score from the wing. Especially if it's Suzuki and Caulfield for the next 3 years or whatever, like, he'll put up 50. I think, like, with a shot like that, with a great center, if Nick Suzuki matures into a player that everybody thinks he can be, like, Caulfield's going to get 50 in his career.
Yeah. Since St. Louis took over, he's now at 24 points in 20 games. Leads all rookies. Bunting is second with 21 and 21. And I love Michael Bunting, honestly. I think he's an animal. Yeah. Absolute animal.
He's all over the ice at all times.
Draws penalties like a crazy person too. Like,
he's second in the league in drawn penalties.
On a team that doesn't draw a lot.
Right. We were talking about Nazem Kadri, like Mr. Bob Ross. Forget that. Like, it's Bunting Bob Ross. Like, it's unbelievable the way he's able to draw penalties and how he's been able to be a pest and get people to, like, who took the penalty on him this game?
Edmondson. Yeah, he was. Edmondson. You could tell that was going to happen from like the first period. He was getting under his skin.
Right. Like, that's so perfect. And he fits so perfectly next to Matthews and Marner, because that's what they need out there. They need the guy who's going to attract the attention from the guys, because he's poking them all. He's poking Edmondson, and then the retaliation gets the penalty drawn. It was a beautiful sight. He's an unbelievable player that nobody had heard of up until this year.
Except for Dubas, because the Sioux, right?
Yeah.
Do you remember when he was signed? People were all over him because he was a former Sioux.
Yeah. No, half the Leafs in like a year are going to be from the Sioux. Going to trade everyone for Sioux Greyhounds.
I mean, it seems to work out. You got to give it to him. It seems to work out. I'm surprised that nobody's talking about Trevor Zegras anymore, because it's not like he's fallen off that much. He has 15 points in 17 games last stretch here.
And like, for the Calder, we don't hold it against the teams that are bad. Like, for the Hart Trophy, if your team's just dog shit, like, your Hart Trophy odds will go down. Yeah. But like the Calder, if you're on a bad team, it's kind of expected, because the rookies don't obviously start off on a good team, and like Mo Seider, Detroit's not doing well, and like that's not held against him at all. So I feel like Zegras should get a little bit more love. And I think like in the odds right now, it goes Seider, then Raymond, then Zegras, then Bunting. Like, I think that's the top 4 on the odds, and Zegras should probably be moved up a little, because he hasn't fallen off at all.
Yeah, he's been great, and such a big part of why Anaheim has been surprising this year. Now, Caulfield, what surprised me the most about him since the coaching change is not even necessarily the scoring, because we all saw that in the playoffs last year. It's the playmaking. Like, he's just been so dynamic, and him and Suzuki. I think what bodes really well for the Canadiens going forward as a franchise is that not only do those two have serious chemistry, but they've also shown that they don't shy away in big moments. And the fact that they've both been killers in the playoffs already, deep into the playoffs, that is super interesting going forward as like how they build their team.
Yeah, like having that experience in your first, before your even first year in the league for Caulfield, like that's something like you can't even quantify, like being able to do that in the playoffs. And then like Josh Anderson is kind of a perfect complement for them. Like if they run with Suzuki, Caulfield, Anderson like next year, if that's the top line. Like I really like it, and they can do some damage because Josh Anderson, he's the guy who's running around being the pest on that line. And he's such a big body. Like he plays the power forward type really well. And I'm a big fan of those three guys working together.
Yeah, me too. I mean, honestly, there's something about Josh Anderson. The last game was worse. When he has bad games, it's really, really noticeable. And when he has good games, it's really, really noticeable. So he's like a very divisive player. And then you have people who, they see how attractive he is and they're like, he can do no wrong.
You look into his eyes. And
exactly.
You're like,
you get
gosh.
lost. But I feel like if he could add just 5% better spatial awareness and playmaking to his game, he becomes a really essential forward for the Montreal Canadiens. But even when he was out with an injury and they put Yoel Armia on that line, they were still killing it. I think they just need like a big body to create a bit of space for them. Like, it's good. We're fine.
Yeah, that's the third piece of the line. It's just a big guy who can get in there. And Josh Anderson, he's that guy. But like you said, his head's not always in it, But I think when they're ready, especially in the playoffs last year, like the Leafs saw it up close and personal what Josh Anderson can do. Like he dominated parts of that series when the Canadiens were mounting their comeback. And like if they all get it together and they are all running at the same time, like it's a really good line. I was just pulling up Josh Anderson's stats here. I didn't know he had a 27 goal season with Columbus back in 18-19.
Yeah,
like that's
wow. Why the Canadiens acquired him, right? Is they thought that they were going to get that kind of guy, and he hasn't really been able to get back there. I think he's gotten close a few times, but he's really inconsistent. That's the thing. And I think they're just hoping that he is one of those late blooming guys who you see all the tools there, but they haven't quite put it together until they finally do. I know last year in the playoffs, would you be surprised to know that he didn't score until, I think he scored maybe once in the Leafs series, and then he didn't score again until like the Stanley Cup final.
Oh, wow. I know he had at least one big goal in the Leafs series, but I didn't know like he went scoreless in the next 2 rounds. No, I'm shocked.
Yeah, it was really weird. He just kind of like disappeared for most of the playoffs.
Right.
Not like completely, but yeah, he's okay. No, I'm wrong. He scored 2 against Vegas. So he scored 2 in the game that the Canadiens won in the Stanley Cup final. I think it was the only 2 goals. And then 2 against Vegas and 1 against the Leafs. So he went 1 goal and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 games with no points.
He had a 12-game pointless streak in the playoffs.
Yep. Then 2 against Vegas.
Wow.
And then no goals, 1 assist. But how many goalless games? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 goalless games again. And then scored 2, and then the Canadiens were eliminated.
See, that's my Leafs fog brain, because like if you tell me, oh, how does Josh Anderson's playoffs last year, I'd be like, he was a beast. Like he came in the Leafs series and he dominated and he had a huge goal and he was a beast. But like hearing that he had a 12-game pointless streak, that's very surprising.
Yeah, it was a weird one. I mean, even last year in the playoffs, like Tyler Toffoli didn't score a lot either, despite he was on pace for like 45 or something in the regular season, but he was injured. The Canadiens were like the team of hand injuries last year. Gallagher was injured. He couldn't even handle the puck. His hand was like exploded. Weber's hand was exploded. I believe Toffoli either was a hand or wrist injury. Like it was a weird Stanley Cup final run, because most of the time when you get that Cinderella team that goes to the end, it's like they get everything go their way health-wise. Canadiens didn't have a lot of guys missing games, but all the guys who were playing were just like held together with like a little bit of bubble gum and popsicle sticks.
Yeah, because it's like the complete opposite of the way the Vegas run went their first year, where you had anybody and everyone scoring goals for them and being big game players. And the Montreal, it seems like nobody did anything, and somehow they won 4 or 3 rounds and made it to the Stanley Cup final. And like, Andrew, I got to ask again, how the hell did they make it to the Stanley Cup final? Because we just look back and we say, they shouldn't have done this.
It's weird that the only series that they won that they shouldn't have won was probably against the Leafs.
Right.
Because they did get massively outplayed. And, we can argue about whether or not they were like super good defensively on like, yeah, they were outshot, but the chances the Leafs got weren't that great. Sure, whatever, maybe. But also Price stood in his head in the final 3 games of that series, right? And especially that overtime in game 6. Like, I think the game 5 was great for the Canadiens. I think that was the one where Galchenyuk did the turnover, right?
Yeah. That was a Galchenyuk turnover
but
game.
Game 6 was the one where I think they actually believed that they could do it because of that overtime. And they're like, okay, he's just going to stop everything then, and we're going to be all right. And then against the Jets,
series was lost in game 6. Yeah.
Yes, definitely. Yeah. I mean, you could tell from the first couple of shifts in game 7, the Leafs were not.
It was awful.
Yeah, they were not there.
Yeah. And then Winnipeg, they kind of dominated.
Yeah, I believe in terms of scoring chance differential, that's like the most dominated a team has been in the analytics era. That's how bad the Jets were.
Wow.
Which is funny because they swept Edmonton.
Yeah. No, Winnipeg's such a weird team because, they weren't great in the playoffs in that series at all. But they looked decent versus Edmonton, but Edmonton just didn't play well.
Yeah,
it was
couldn't draw a call against them either, right? Like there was that whole controversy with McDavid having a guy on his back, like a backpack, the entire series, and then Mike Smith. Actually, I think wasn't Mike Smith actually decent in that series? Can't remember.
Yeah. No, they got a couple saves from him.
Yeah,
but I look back on that playoffs and I'm like, the right team won. Like Tampa Bay won the Stanley Cup.
Yes,
definitely. And like that's how I choose to remember it, not by
not the worst parts.
All the other ridiculous things that happened.
Yeah, and the other thing was with Vegas. I think Vegas just played a system that perfectly played into what the Canadiens were doing. Is if you remember in that last couple games of the Toronto series, is the Canadiens were just like, let's protect the middle of the ice at all costs, and we'll give them everything else. And Danault, just be on Matthews at all times, and we'll hope that because Matthews isn't available, that Marner will make a bad play. And that's basically what happened. They let Marner hold on to the puck, and he was like, I can't find Matthews. I'll try to force it. And it was like turnover after turnover. And against Vegas, they were a team that loved to shoot from the outside. Almost all their scoring came from their defensemen and like far out from the boards in that series. So the Canadiens were overmatched in terms of like skill for sure, but Danault did a job on Mark Stone, same as he did against Matthews in the first round. And without Stone to like skill them through it, they couldn't get into the middle of the ice at all. And the only guys that did were, I think, Pacioretty and Nick Waugh. And other than that,
and they were missing Chandler Stevenson, who was their number 1 center at the time.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
like
Mark Scheifele also took himself out in the Jets series with
and
his
then Tavares
stupidity.
Was out. Yeah. And then the perfect thing the Canadiens did was they limited the scoring, the high danger scoring chances. Like all they did was let the teams pepper these shots on Price, and Price was always going to stop all the shots from the fringes of the zone. And they did a fantastic job pushing everything out. And that's how they got through those 4 rounds, especially against the Leafs. Where the Leafs, everyone's like, Leafs got 40 shots, but like 38 of them were just low danger chances.
And then against the Tampa Bay Lightning, that did not work.
Yeah. At all. And then Tampa was like, oh, we're actually too good for this.
Yeah, it was like the Leafs, everything revolved around like Marner passing to Matthews, right? It was very binary.
Yeah.
And then the Lightning, when they came on, because the Canadiens, the biggest thing that I think propelled them through those playoffs was the penalty kill. And they were decent on the penalty kill in limiting chances, but also Price had something like a 97.8% save percentage heading into the Stanley Cup final. And then the Tampa Bay penalty kill or power play last year in the playoffs was operating at like 40-something% going into the Stanley Cup final. And they're like, we're just going to rip you to shreds now. And it's going to be ugly. And it was.
Yeah. No, like, and going back to the Leafs there, what I like from them this year and what I've loved from the top line is Marner is now a scoring threat. Yeah. Like Marner actually has a shot and he's willing to use it and take those shots. And he's going to put up 30 goals this season. He's already up at 27. And just adding that little tiny element where there's 2 guys on the line now that can shoot and score. And it's not just Matthews. It's not just Hyman and Marner feeding Matthews the puck. Now it's Bunting's out there running around. And now Marner's out there actually taking these shots. And the slap shot he scored in the next gen game on Wednesday was beautiful. He had a couple really good chances tonight. And I just love that there's now two threats. And it's less likely they'll get stopped in the playoffs if there's two guys out there that can actually score.
Yeah. And I mean, if Marner can get over whatever goes on in his head when the playoffs start, it's a different situation. And as much as people were all over Matthews last year, I really don't think, after watching what happened to other high-end scorers from what Phil Deneau was doing last year, that it was about him. Like, I just think Phil Deneau was a monster. He was... I've never seen a guy who scored one goal in the playoffs have a legitimate chance to like win a Conn Smythe if they actually won. It was incredible. He
was such an impact player that I'm shocked they let him go. I get why you don't want to pay the price, but he was such an important piece of this team that when he wasn't on the roster to start the year, I wasn't surprised they started off slow and that they were missing that great center that they had. Like, he's such a special talent, and I haven't watched a lot of LA Kings games this year, but they're also going to be in the playoffs. They've been sneaky good. They're in the second place in the division. I believe they might have fallen back to third right now, but he's going to be a threat there in the playoffs, and he might do some damage with that Kings team who is playing above their talent level.
Yeah, and I think if the Canadiens can learn anything about the mishandling of Phil Deneau, because the big thing last year and the hesitancy to sign him was, we don't know if he can score, because he only had 5 goals in the regular season last year. He shot 6.5%. And then in the playoffs, 1 goal. Right. What did he shoot? 2.6% in the playoffs.
But it wasn't about the goals.
And he scored a goal, I believe, in the Stanley Cup final. But the other thing is, this year, on a team where he's not the number one guy, career high 21 goals.
Hey, there you go. I was just bringing up those numbers. That's 21, 18, 39 points for Deneau. That's unexpected. And like, if you're Montreal, you're probably regretting what you did this offseason.
Yeah. And the lesson that they can learn there is with Brendan Gallagher this year. Brendan Gallagher, I think I mentioned this on the show a couple weeks ago because he's injured now, so nobody's really talking about it. But he's a guy that people aren't sure if they should keep around for the rebuild because, he plays a hard game. He's been injured a lot lately. And this year he has 0 5-on-5 goals.
Is that true?
0 5-on-5 goals for Brendan Gallagher. All his goals are either on an empty net or a power play goal.
Wow.
He might have one 4-on-4. I don't know, but I think he only has 5 goals this year in like 40-ish games played. He's missed a lot of time. But over the last 3 years before this one, if you look at prorated, like per 60-minute goals at 5-on-5, it goes Austin Matthews, Brendan Gallagher.
Wow.
So what's the outlier there? I would bet on the 1 year where he's been injured the whole time. And he's had enough hand injuries where you kind of wonder if his shot is not going to be what it used to be. But he doesn't have to score the second most goals in the league to be worth $6 million. He's still a very good... somebody brings up about 5 disallowed goals too. Yeah, this is true, but that's always going to happen for Brendan Gallagher because he's earned that reputation. But I think the Canadiens should definitely look at that and say, and I believe this administration already has, and said, like, we're not gonna move him.
Yeah, is there a conversation about trying to move that contract because he signed through till forever, right? Are they looking at it? Because he's such a staple on this team and he's such a great talent. I think you keep him around just for his talent's sake,
I think that they talked about it before they traded both Toffoli and Lehkonen.
Right.
And I think you kind of need one at least of those 3 players to stay through a rebuild, just because those are the guys that just every game this year gave it their all. And there were a lot of guys who did not. So I think they got to keep one of them, and Gallagher is that guy. I don't think he's going to be captain, which is what a lot of people speculate, but I think he's a guy that sticks around just because he will put his face in front of a puck to block a shot. He will put his face in front of a puck to score one too. And you need a couple of guys like that at some point, and it's hard to find them, really.
Do you remember when we were in Montreal for Adam's bachelor party and we were at that like swanky nightclub or whatever, and Gallagher was there?
I think I left before Gallagher showed up. When I was there, I only saw Jacob Delarose, which is a big throwback.
Jacob Delarose. That is a throwback.
Because
I know.
When I went out for that, my oldest was a couple months old. That was in November, right?
Right. Yeah. It would have been November. It was like late November or something. It was really cold that day. And we all wore Leafs jerseys to a non-Leafs Montreal Canadiens game. I forget who they were playing that night. But yeah, whenever I think of Brendan Gallagher, I always remember that one weird run-in where he was behind a velvet rope at a Montreal nightclub for Adam's bachelor party.
Yeah, I've run into Brendan Gallagher a couple of times, and it's one of those situations where I'm like, NHL height listings are not correct.
Oh, really?
Well, my biggest one was JG Pajot, who I think the NHL lists at like 5'10", and I ran into him in Vegas in 2014, and I was taller than him, and I'm 5'7", Jesse.
No way. That's funny. So are you taller or than Gallagher as well?
I think by a little bit.
Oh wow. And he's listed at 5'9".
Is he listed at 5'9"? Wow, I thought it was like 5'8".
They're cheating that a little.
Yeah. I think everybody gets measured with their skates on except for Zdeno Chara, who might be taller than that.
Oh god. But just going back to Gallagher, like that's a guy who loves the Montreal community, who's out and about in the city all the time, who's a fan favorite, who plays really hard. If you're Hughes, like you have him stick around till the end of that deal, till he was old and gray, and you have him. Canadiens fans would know better about the captaincy, but he's got to be on this roster from now until 2027. You know, like he's a staple on that team in my eyes.
Yeah, it'd be hard to move into next season, I think, without Brendan Gallagher. I think that Nick Suzuki will be the captain if they name the captain next year. Yeah, I think they love Nick Suzuki, and I think for good reason. And plus that contract that they gave him, right? They're betting on the long-term future there, which I think since the coaching change again he's shown why they bet on him. But I think he still needs support guys throughout the lineup, and Brendan Gallagher is going to be a guy who's necessary there, especially with like Jeff Petry's likely to be gone. You need a couple of veterans to lean on.
Yeah, Gallagher is like the ultimate support guy, like just based on his personality and the stories we've heard. Like that's who he is. I'm really surprised that you think Suzuki's going to be captain. That's an interesting thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think most Canadiens fans believe that now, just because there's so few guys in the league that are a coach's first choice, like at even strength, shorthanded, on the power play, in the shootout, in overtime, when you need a goal, when you're protecting a 1-goal lead. Like he does literally everything, and he seems to have that like quiet, understated game that a lot of GMs and coaches seem to love. I don't know if they'll do the vote thing. The Canadiens like to pretend that they do the vote thing, but just name a captain behind the scenes. Like I remember with Pacioretty, they said that they did the vote, but like the coaching staff and the management team picked it. But he probably would have won the vote anyway. But yeah, I think Nick Suzuki is the natural choice. He's just a bit young, right? And with a young captain, you need some insulation. Somebody said Gallagher's got to shave his head like Giordano. He'll bounce back, no question. Yeah, he's got to admit it. Just gotta make the admission. Watching Giordano tonight, you know who he reminded me of was Andrei Markov, another guy who got old, but just was so intelligent about the game and the way he played the puck. He was just really excellent late into his career, and always seemed to hang on past when you think he would have been able to. Because when he was younger, he was a great skater, and then he had like 5 knee injuries over the course of 2 years. He missed a full season. And I think a half, maybe even more. It was like a full season, and then he played 13 games or something like that the next year. And people thought he was done, but he was just so smart. And Giordano, same thing. Markov came back, shaved his head. Giordano shaved his head. Maybe that's the secret. Aerodynamics.
The comparison, it's really good because like tonight there was a moment where Giordano was like trailing the play, and like he doesn't have the wheels to get back and cover anything. But he knew the puck was gonna go to the middle of the zone, and he went to that area, and he was right where the puck was when it was on his stick, and he turned it back around. And he went the other way, and like Markov's. It was. Do you remember that play? Yeah, and like Markov's so smart that he was the exact same player who would make those exact same really smart plays. It's that intelligence thing. It's like when you're young and like you're playing basketball with the old guy at the gym or whatever, and like he's doing all the old guy moves. He can't keep up with he doesn't have the legs anymore, but he's so much smarter than all the kids playing. Like that's what I see with Giordano out there. Like he seems so much smarter than everybody on the ice, and he knows where the puck is going to be, and he's always in the perfect position. And like I can't be happier with what he's brought to the Leafs.
Yeah, awesome. I think he's a great fit, honestly. Like that's the kind of thing that makes me kind of believe that the Leafs would move on. But then again, I thought they were going to win last year too. I thought they were going to make it out of the first round. Like I had a tweet.
So did everybody, Andrew. So did everybody.
Everybody thought it. I think every single person from every single media org picked the Leafs.
How could you not? They dominated
every bit of evidence.
Division. Oh,
yeah. It all pointed one way.
Yeah.
Yeah. Somebody said letting Markov go was easily a top 5 mistake of the Bergevin regime. I think letting him go wasn't necessarily the big mistake so much as letting him go with no organizational replacement in-house. And that's the same thing that happened with Shea Weber, who they knew was injured the whole time, and they had nothing coming up the pipeline. Now, Caden Gooley is not Shea Weber, but brings a lot of that snarl and projects to be a good player, but he's not going to be in the NHL for another year or two, so...
Right. That's not a Shea Weber replacement.
No.
At all.
And they still don't have a Markov replacement, right?
Yeah.
It's been years, so they just... It's not going to go. Somebody says, Eric Angles called it. Eric might say he called it, but I remember the column when they had all the Sportsnet picks, and he said Toronto in 7. So, no, he did not call it.
Yeah,
Eric did not call it. He's altering his pick in hindsight there. Oh,
right.
Eric.
Eric was very high on the team. He gave them a lot of credit. But when it came down to picking them, and Sportsnet posted all of the reporters' picks, Engels had the Leafs. So, yeah.
Yep. He did. Everyone did.
That off.
It's okay to be wrong. That was a very unpredictable series. It just was. Yeah. But, all right. Well, let's wrap it up because I kept you forever here, Jesse. But before
we can go all night.
Yeah, that's true. Let's do it. No, I got to wake up tomorrow morning. The kids wake up early. But before we go, obviously, people don't know Jesse Blake very well. So tell everyone where they can find your work, Jesse.
Oh, my gosh. Well, right where you are right now, the SDPN YouTube channel. We are here all the time. We have many great things coming out. I stream on Twitch every Wednesday and Friday where I play NHL 22, and I try and win the Stanley Cup with the Toronto Maple Leafs. I've been unsuccessful in 12 straight seasons, but, there's always next year. We'll see how that goes. And always make sure you listen to the Steve Dangle Podcast. I assume you've never heard of it.
No,
Monday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, or Monday, Wednesday, and Friday with Steve Dangle, Adam Wilde, and Jesse Blake.
And of course, we got to shout out Noxie and Cax, who had Marie-Philippe Poulin on this week.
I think that might be the best episode of anything that SDPN has ever released. It's so good.
So good. They're doing amazing things with that show. I don't know if you saw, Jesse, but on the Crab People Discord, they were saying that I had to ask you about how to build a winner in Montreal because you've got all this experience building teams in Chell. And I said, I have to ask somebody who's actually won.
Well, you're not wrong. Like, what am I supposed to do? I haven't won anything with my fake NHL 22 team. So yeah, I'm not the one to ask about winning. I mirror the Leafs in real life. It's ridiculous.
I mean, so do we all, really. We're all out here not being winners, but the real winners are the people who tuned into this show. And thanks everybody for tuning in. We're going to be back tomorrow because the Canadiens are playing back-to-back games with Tony Ferrari, and we're going to dig deep into the top 5 of this year's draft class, which the Canadiens are going to walk away with one of them. And talk about the Canadiens prospects as well, because they just acquired a bunch of players, right? Some guys that people know, some that they don't. And Justin Barron might play. Jordan Harris might play. There's a lot to talk about with a scout like Tony Ferrari. Thanks, Jesse, for doing this. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. See you in less than 24 hours.